Well, thanks for joining me today for this edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM, The Word. I'm Roberta Foster, and today I welcome Barbara Tifft Blakey to Author's Corner. She has written a novel called The Angel of 2nd Street. It's published by Barbara Publishing, and she'll tell you more about how to find it at the end of the program. Let me tell you a little bit about Barbara. She lives in the Pacific Northwest on 5 wooded acres with Terry, her husband of 40 plus years. She's best known for her award-winning literature-inspired language arts program called Total Language Plus, which she created over 20 years ago and is used by thousands of homeschoolers. Barbara teaches Sunday school and enjoys speaking on various topics to Christian women's groups. And Barbara, thank you so much for being with us on Author's Corner.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here.
So the book, The Angel of 2nd Street, is actually book 1 in the Enduring Hope series being published by Barbara. So tell us what you can about this series and how you feel about writing book number 1.
First of all, the feelings about writing book number 1 is such an honored place to be, and especially for my first full-length novel. I am thrilled and grateful for the opportunity to share something I'm passionate about, which is writing about the love of Jesus and his impact in our lives. The book is the whole series, Enduring Hope, was actually taken from proposals that other authors had presented to Barbara and had not been accepted for a series they did called A Day of Disaster. But these titles all fit in well with hope, just keeping hope through those difficult times, and the having Jesus be that center of the hope. I haven't read all of the other books in the series because they haven't all been released yet, but I do know that enduring hope theme of Jesus being the center of our hope is a recurring theme through all of the novels that will be offered.
And one of the things that I read about the series is that it's based on man-made disasters from America's history. So in your book, what disaster is your book based on?
It may be a little politically controversial, but it's the truth of what happened. On February 9th in 1855, the citizens of Eureka, California, decided they no longer wanted to put up with the Chinese residents there. They had never meshed into the culture, and so a gallows was constructed in the center of town, and the Chinese were given a few hours, really, to get on the boat headed to San Francisco or risk being hung. They sent riders out to all of Humboldt County, gathering in as many Chinese as they could find, and they put them on that boat. No one in San Francisco knew they were coming, and so when the Chinese disembarked, they just blended into the Chinese community that was already established there. But they didn't go down without a fight. They were forced to leave with whatever they could carry, and their possessions were then burned in the middle of the street, anything that was left behind. When they arrived in San Francisco, they immediately filed suit against the city of Eureka. But because at the time it was illegal for any Chinese to go to court against a white person, it was thrown out of court. So never any retribution or any recompense for what happened on that day. Then the citizens of Eureka, while they were immediately thrilled to be rid of this horrible scum they considered, those aren't my words.
Right.
They all of a sudden were faced with now what do we do? Who's going to clean our houses? Who's going to do our laundry? Who's going to take care of the things that we were paying them to do for us? At the time, Eureka had a population of about 13,000, but in that 13,000, there were 200 mansions built on the shipping industry and the lumber barons.
Wow.
So the town was all of a sudden faced with some issues they had not considered.
Yeah. So what you just...
an immigration story, too.
Yeah. Well, and of course, what you shared with us is the true history of the time. Yes. Only a little bit of that is actually content in your novel, correct?
That's correct, because it is a romance novel with two people who are struggling to find how to bring the gospel of Jesus to these populations. My main character, Ida, wants very much to have everyone know Jesus, and the love interest, Blaine, is also interested not as much maybe in sharing the gospel of Jesus, but in making a difference in the world. He wants to leave the world a better place, and that's his desire. Ida is also very interested, not just in the Chinese. She has a Chinese housekeeper who she has a relationship with, but also in Eureka, historically correct at the time, was 2nd Street. And on 2nd Street was where the working women plied their wares. It was considered so vile that children were forbidden from ever going down that block in 2nd Street. And some of the places mentioned, like Kitty Ferris's Joy Emporium, was a real place. She no longer has a Joy Emporium. Wells Drugstore, located on the corner, served the needs of those working women. And those were some facts that were fun to include. Eureka is not ashamed. Well, that's probably a wrong choice of words. Eureka doesn't back away from the truth of its history, and doing the research there was a joy because I wasn't getting information that was rewritten or covered over because of the ugliness of it. I got truth. The Historical Society was amazing, providing me with newspaper copies, and one of the real characters in the book was Reverend Huntington, and any conversations he has with Ida or Blaine, those are all fiction, but not the ones, there were some quoted straight from the newspapers and other sources that I could find to show where he stood on all of this, a brave man to stand up against his community like he did.
Wow. Well, we have more to talk about with Barbara Tifft Blakey regarding her novel, The Angel of 2nd Street. It's published by Barbara Publishing, and you're listening to Author's Corner, and I'm Roberta Foster. So as I read your book, I was so impressed by Ida's enthusiasm and passion to tell others about Jesus without care to what others thought of her actions. So who inspired you as you created Ida's character?
I have a daughter, my youngest daughter. I have 3 girls altogether, but my youngest daughter, Becky, has had that type of passion. She has always befriended the friendless. She has worked as a missionary in Germany for 3 years, but before that, even as a child, she was the one to seek out the child who didn't have a playmate. As she grew older, she worked in downtown Olympia with the homeless, and she worked Fort Lewis is located near us, and so she did Chapel Next, reaching out to the military people to tell them about Jesus. And so Ida really isn't like her, except for that boldness, that desire to let everybody know how much different lives could be, because it's so true, how much of a difference it makes in our lives. I can't help but think, what would the world be like if everybody knew Jesus?
your book is a definite tool to inspire people, to give them maybe to see the boldness in others, that perhaps it will revive the boldness in each person that reads your book.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that just be a divine thing from God for that to happen?
Amen. So as you think about your book and as people read it, is there something that you really hope that they take away from the book other than being, we'll say, entertained?
I want them to think about our political climate today, how critical sometimes we can be about people who are different from us, and to realize that we are all God's children, and some of us don't know it yet, and that I want there to be a passion for the misunderstood.
Okay.
I don't mean that I'm taking a stand against immigration policies or anything that strong, just to look at the world with compassion, especially for those who are different from us.
Okay. So you mentioned that you are responsible or the writer of a language arts program called Total Language Plus. In a minute or so, why don't you tell us more about that?
We homeschooled. And when I started homeschooling so many years ago, 1991, there were not as many resources as there are today. And I didn't want to homeschool. I just thought I was not qualified to do it, but it was a huge, major blessing in my life. I have 4 children. They're all grown up now, and I have grandchildren. But Total Language Plus is a Christian literature-based language arts program that we've won award after award for.
Wonderful.
It's a Charlotte Mason approach. Those who are familiar with homeschooling will recognize her name. We use a discovery style learning, and we use novels, real fiction novels, to teach all of the elements of language arts. So it's a comprehensive program that covers spelling, vocabulary, comprehension, critical thinking, writing, grammar, all based on whatever novel is being read.
Okay. And so speaking of novels, is there something that you're working on for the future in your writing?
I'm supposed to answer that with a definitive yes, and I want to. On September 8th of this fall, last fall, I lost my son.
Oh.
And the Angel of 2nd Street is actually dedicated to him. Writing comes from such a deep place for me. I feel God's presence just sitting right beside me. And if I never published anything, just that experience of having God join me in the work would be enough. But I haven't been able to go that deep yet. But we volunteer, my husband and I volunteer at a Christian Bible camp at Pleasant Valley Christian Camp. And it is a place of healing and a place of calm. I always meet God there. And so we're going to be spending the summer there. And I'm hoping to continue my story, The Angel of 2nd Street, to write a follow-up book for that by digging deeper and getting through the grief. I know the grief won't ever completely leave. A parent can't lose a child and then just get over it. But I'm hoping God will meet me there like he has before, and I can work through it.
Amen. So one more time, I've been talking with Barbara Tifft Blakey about her book, The Angel of 2nd Street. And so before you leave us, Barbara, tell our listeners how they can find out more about this book.
Well, it's on Amazon. That's one of the easiest places to find it. So just check it out on Amazon. And I have an author website, barbaratiftblakey.com. I'd love to have listeners contact me there. I respond whenever I get an email or message from them. So that's the best way.
All righty. So one more time, the book is The Angel of 2nd Street, and I have been talking with Barbara Tifft Blakey, and we certainly thank Barbara Publishing for giving us a copy of the book to talk about today. And Barbara, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I definitely feel honored by it.
And to our listeners, if you'd like to hear this interview again or possibly share it with someone else, you can find it on your favorite podcast platform or go through kneo.org. So thank you so much for tuning in. This is Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join me again next time.